Hello, and welcome to episode 14 of Sir Astro's Star Wars Shatterpoint painting series. In this video I'll be painting Grand Admiral Thrawn from the Star Wars Shatterpoint miniatures game by Atomic Mass Games. Let's jump straight in. As usual, I've primed the figure in black, and here I'm using some grey then white to provide some zenithal highlights from above. I'm aiming for fairly broad coverage here to allow us to take some shortcuts with the white uniform later on. You can also see that I've provided the brightest highlights from a slight angle, casting the left side of the face in shadow to add interest. I'm going to begin by painting the eyes, where I'm first providing a white undercoat, and this doesn't need to be especially accurate. We can then paint over this with whatever red you like, and I'm using the ProAcryl red as I'm keen to explore more of their range. Once again, we don't need to be too careful here. I'm now using some black to carefully trim the eyes back, creating some dark lining in the process. Next I'm going to use a mix of blue, black and blue to provide a base colour for the skin. For the remaining areas, I've chosen the slightly smoother and more satin Scalecolor Artist paints, where I'm using a mix of black and Prussian Blue for the hair, boots, belt and the blaster pistol. I'm now going to begin highlighting the skin, firstly by using increasing amounts of blue mixed into the base tone. We can cover all but the deepest shadows with this. For the brighter highlights, I'm going to work up to sky blue, followed with some turquoise and some bright ivory. Here I'm beginning to define the distinctive volumes on the forehead. This is now pure sky blue. Here I'm going back and forth a little with the shadow and highlight tones to help define the expression around the eyes. I'm now introducing some turquoise. This is barely brighter than the sky blue, but has more of a luminous quality. For the brightest highlights, I'm now mixing in some bright ivory. Here I'm mixing some red in with the blue to create a purplish tone for the lips. And I went back and forth a little between this and a paler pink tone for the lower lip highlight. I've decided to give the eyes a little more life by giving each one a glinting white highlight. These can then be trimmed back with the red as necessary. And these are my last few skin highlights. Next I'm going to highlight the hair and accessories by simply adding white to the black and dark sea blue base tone. We can of course adjust the amount of blue in the mix, and for the hair I'm going pretty blue. Naturally, we want a wide range of values for the buckle as well as the blaster pistol. We can also use a mid-grey tone for the details on the outfit. Moving on to the white uniform, there are several approaches we could take. The simplest approach would be to leave it as it is, as the zenithal highlights already provide a pretty decent sense of volume. We might still need to mix some pale grey tones to tidy up any areas we may have hit along the way, otherwise we have a look that is absolutely good enough for the table. If you'd like to add a little more colour interest and contrast, we could provide a tinted wash. For that, I'm going to tint some neutral grey with a hint of blue. Then thin the paint with the ProAcryl Glaze and Wash medium. So here I'm tinting the grey. And I'm now thinning the paint with the medium. We can then simply apply the paint like a heavy glaze or wash over the entire uniform, encouraging the paint into the shadows and recesses, and soaking it up from the more highlighted areas as we go. Once dry, I decided to reinforce some of the shadows with a second application. This is a nice easy way of introducing a subtle bit of colour interest, and gives us another possible stopping point for the uniform. If you want to push things to the next level, we can of course take full control of the hue and levels from shadow to highlight by mixing a more varied gradient on the palette, as seen in my Enjoy Painting White video. So, building from the neutral grey and blue shadow tone, I've chosen to create a highlight tone of bright neutral grey mixed with a hint of turquoise, moving into some bright ivory for the brightest areas of highlight. So here I'm mixing my gradient, where I'm using the colours to create a gentle variation of hue as we progress from shadow to midtone to highlight. I'm then more or less reworking the entire uniform, building on the pattern of values already present, but introducing an extra dimension of colour, depth and contrast. I really wanted to reinforce a strong sense of light coming from the upper right of the model, so you'll see me returning to push the values here on the right shoulder and upper chest pretty far. I kind of jumped around a bit, working in a somewhat sketchy style for much of this, and you'll often see me using multiple short strokes with the brush that run perpendicular to the various cylindrical volumes. Notice the subtle contrast of colour temperature between the warmer ivory tones in the highlights compared to the cooler shadow tones. Notice that I'm often decreasing the values as well as raising them, all with the aim of playing with the ambience or mood and sense of volume. We can now paint the remaining details on the outfit, and I'm starting with some yellow ochre for the shoulders. I'm then adding increasing amounts of vanilla white to build up some highlights. Here I'm adding a little dark sea blue and black to add some depth and variety to the shadowed areas. And after a little back and forth, I'm now mixing some white into the vanilla white to add my brightest glints. I'm now pausing to use a dark grey to articulate the lining on the outfit. Next I'm picking out the grey symbols on the collar. I'm also highlighting the remaining details on the chest. And I'm using some primary colours for the rank badge. Because the yellow is fairly translucent, I'm first using vanilla white to bring up the values. I'm then applying the yellow on top. We can do some final tidying up with the grey if necessary. I'm now gluing Thrawn to his base and providing a few final highlights. And this completes Grand Admiral Thrawn. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found the video useful. As always, you can find full paint and product lists in the video description, along with links to all of the places I can be found online. My deepest thanks go to my kind patrons for funding this work. If you'd like to support what I do, feel free to hit the Patreon link to find out more. Join me again soon as we continue painting miniatures from Star Wars Shatterpoint. Happy painting!